Hey there, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this webinar together with the Presales Collective. We love James and Yuji over at PSC. So big shout out. Thank you so much. Also to Troops for helping make this happen. We're going to give it a quick second to just let folks trickle in. And get settled in. Alex is going to my colleague, my wonderful colleague Alex is going to launch a poll. So as you come in, go ahead and just take a second to fill out the poll, and we'll get going. So one thing that I usually love to do is play guitar, but I didn't plan on that today. Maybe next time. I got to clear that with James and Yuji first. So, it's interesting because we've been really seeing this massive focus on demo technology, demo best practices, organizations that are going product-led or incorporating product-led motions into their strategy. And for me, it's really exciting because, as a longtime salesperson, I've always been focused on the really nailing that demo. It was always that kind of like point in the workflow where the sale either went forward or went nowhere, or you were able to learn a lot about what where you were at in your process. So I'm super excited to be talking about that today, and with some really the top practitioners in our space. And of course, pre-sales is just getting started, it feels like. And I do these podcasts all the time where people, I interview sales engineers and other pre-sales professionals, and one of the questions that I ask is why now? And it seems like there's a fusion between organizations really wanting to be more competitive and more customer focused, and having a technical stakeholder on the other side that also understands sales acumen, and really because it's a really, I think, important to be able to craft your process to to really adhere to the buyer. So that, and then of course the explosion of SaaS technologies out there. Hello, Paul Vidal. Good to see you here. And folks, just as a reminder, we do have a chat, so feel free to go ahead and engage on that chat and rock and roll there, meet new people, maybe exchange LinkedIn's. And this is really a great place to meet other stakeholders out there who not only share a passion for pre-sales, but also can maybe be your colleague one day. So we'll give it another minute, and then we'll go ahead and get started. And if you do have, hey, Liz, great to see you. Brad, thank you so much. Scott, thank you. We have India, Denver, awesome. Colorado, so another Colorado, Ohio, San Francisco,
Hello.
my old stomping ground. Awesome.
What time are we starting, Jorge? Or
Yeah,
is it Jorge or George? Sorry.
Either one. Actually, Susan, we're live right now. But yeah, we're just giving folks a quick second to go ahead and trickle in. It usually takes a couple minutes for folks to get settled in here. So we'll give it about another minute, and then we'll dive in. Oakland, Detroit, Berlin. Wow. So really an international, the Netherlands, and international crowd here. And just a quick reminder here in the last couple seconds, just to fill out that poll, and we'll go ahead and get started. All right, well, let's get ready and move forward. Thank you again so much to everyone for taking the time to join us today for this webinar, really focused on what happened to the SaaS demo. So let's move on to the next slide. We're going to go and just go around the horn here, do some quick introductions. I'll go ahead and kick it off here, and then we'll be followed by Paul Vidal. My name is George or Jorge. I get both. uh, it's a long story, but I head up content and community here at Reprise. Paul, why don't you go for it?
Hey, yeah, so my name is Paul. I'm VP of Sales here at Reprise. I am a recovering solution engineer. Recently joined the dark side when I saw what Reprise could do for the SE team. I'm excited about talking about demos today.
Awesome. Susan, thank you so much. Why don't you take it from here?
Yeah, thrilled to be here today. Hi, everyone. I'm the GVP of pre-sales at Blue Yonder, world's leading supply chain platform. Previously ran global solution consulting at Infor, so lots of enterprise experience.
Great. Liz at Slack, one of my favorite tools. How are you?
Doing great today. So my name is Liz Anderson. I'm based out of the San Francisco Bay Area. I lead the mid-market and SMB teams out of Slack for SE, so in West and Central. I'm super excited to be here to talk about demos.
Thank you so much. And Scott, why don't you wrap us up?
Yeah, that leaves me. Great to be here, and thank you for the introduction. My name is Scott Blacker, and I lead the Global Solutions Engineering team at Atlassian.
Awesome. Well, let's get ready to go to the next slide. Perfect. Just a little bit about Presales Collective. We have a great organization here with over 500. Well, there's over 500,000 pre-sales professionals globally. Yet, there hasn't really been an organization that has brought them all together in this way. And so, kudos to the Presales Collective folks. Definitely check out the website. Here's a little bit about some of the events that we've done. We have our next one on 5/8, or actually 6/15, 5/18 today. And so again, big shout out to the Presales Collective folks. All right, so what are we going to cover today here? We're going to talk a little bit about what Paul's going to cover, why the role of the demo is changing in the first place within an organization. Susan's going to go in and talk about how the enterprise is adapting. Certainly huge focus for a lot of folks to kind of figure out how to adapt to this new landscape. Scott's going to go and talk a little bit about the demo as a growth mechanism versus a land mechanism, and then Liz is going to focus on how the consumerization of enterprise software is affecting the landscape. And of course, we'll go ahead and then go into some Q&A and then cover a couple other items on our way out. All right, Paul, why don't you kick us off with what happened to the demo?
Sure. So that's an interesting question, because traditionally we think about demos of after a sales call where you had some qualifications from the A teams, like probably a second call or something, and you go and say, this is the product that we have, right? And the only, it was back in the day in the 1400s when we were meeting people face to face, and we were actually showing them the product, which I don't remember. But really, I mean, COVID obviously has a big impact on our sales motion, but realistically, there's been a big movement towards this demo done by one person really evolving, right? It's not only like I'm going to show you kind of the product that we built, right? And then me coming from the enterprise side, I can definitely relate to this. Now, they've changed, like the way that we do demo has changed, and it's becoming more and more a table stake that a user can experience your product firsthand without speaking to you, right? And this is coming from things that everybody knows is this is the way that we experience purchasing when you purchasing an app on your phone. You're not asking to talk to someone that's going to give you the value of, I don't know, your podcast app, right? You're just experiencing it. So this is quite interesting because you have all these free trials, but realistically, when you talk about a more complex product, just a free trial is not the answer for everything. You still have to guide your users, all right? So how do we provide how does the demo evolve from being just something that was purely spoken? Clearly, just free trial is not the only answer. So how do we build this? Like, what do we do as a sales and pre-sales organization? Well, it's about an evolution, right? It's demo is never going to go away. It's just evolving. You are going to start to see best practices around how to do these demos. There's doing things like measuring the impact on what you're showing. How do you measure if a demo resonates to your audience or not? And how much independence do you give to your prospect versus how much control can you retain? And this is kind of what we're here to discuss, trying to understand the evolution of our demo in our sales motions. And we have here on the panel people that are experiencing this firsthand from many ends of the spectrum. I'm really, really excited by this conversation to see everybody's perspective.
Awesome. It's a great segue into our next slide, and expert Liz Anderson on at Slack. Liz, if you think about sort of the demo on your website, why don't you take a quick second to walk us through that? What does that look like, and what's kind of the strategy behind it?
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing because, anybody can go and sign up for a free trial, but really, because Slack you can use completely free. I'm sure many people on this panel, if not, the people who are joining this webinar, have used Slack in some capacity for free. Sometimes some people's first interactions with it are even in a community workspace like Presales Collective, or maybe it is, with their kids, soccer teams, or whatever those things are. I know what people are smiling because it's true, right? And so when you have that first experience be something so loose, how do you go in and from a business sense say, this is what Slack can do for your business? So while we do have something a demo on our website, it's very, very basic because we have to be able to basically have two conversations with people. We have either those greenfield accounts, those people who have very little, if not no interaction with Slack, in which case we have to just explain what channel-based communication is. Many times people have experience with Slack, but it's mainly from a chat perspective, where they come out and thinking Slack is a chat tool, when it's really, really not. It's an engagement layer that connects people, data, and applications, and it's so much more. But then you have, companies who are utilizing Slack quite heavily. But one of the things with Slack is pretty much everybody, even, those of us here at Slack, we can do so much more with it. It's such a complex tool, but you don't realize it because, as we talk about the consumerization of enterprise products, it seems very easy to use. So when things seem very easy to use, it doesn't seem very, robust, but it is.
But it is. I know I use Giphy on Slack, so I'm obviously an expert, but where I need a demo, right?
Exactly. So there comes that time where you are talking to somebody about our enterprise product with Slack, and you're talking to them about Grid. You're talking to them about how are they, as a very security conscious organization, going to set up Slack in a way to make sure that they are compliant. So let's just say like healthcare companies, for instance, you have HIPAA regulation. You can't have PHI in a public forum. So how do we set up in a way to make sure that you are minimizing risk? And so also just telling people, even though they love Slack, they use it every day, telling them you may not actually know as much about Slack as you think, without actually telling them they don't know anything about Slack. That's the trick.
Well, given that, you have this lightweight demo on the website, what's the next product demo in the motion, after the site?
Yeah. So typically we will like to have discovery. If you feel like everybody here is going to say discovery is so important, not only in the beginning, but throughout. And then we can go in and we can do a demonstration. Now, for, you can mention those greenfield accounts, we might even have something like a disco demo, where we ask those questions as we go through the product demonstration for those people who really, we just need to be on the same page, talk the same language. But then we could also do a tailored demonstration, which takes some of the use cases that we already have, tailors it to the things that we got from the discovery, or we can do a full-on custom demonstration. Let's just say we've had multiple use case interviews with a customer and we really deeply know what their pain points are and what we can do to help with those.
Gotcha. Now, do you have sort of like different variations of the demo, and like a harbor tour, sort of like a couple clicks to the aha, and then you have sort of something that's more of a light POC, and then maybe for some of the larger accounts, you build out a much more robust POC?
I mean, there are some aspects of that, but and we're actually working to figure out right now, figuring out some of those industry specific or line of business specific demos. But one of the great things about Slack and the hardest things about Slack is we literally can sell to any single industry, to any single line of business. It's across the board. Pretty much anybody can use Slack. So then how do you have a really compelling stock demo when you might be talking to somebody in insurance or healthcare or a sports team? They're going to use it in many different ways.
And that's always interesting, because you think that you would have we always talk about personalization in doing demos, and you always think like, oh, I need to have this demo that's exactly for my persona. One of the things that I always found fascinating is, there has to be some diminishing return. There has to be a point in which, investing into creating a bespoke demo for each and every person that I'm having on the phone is, it's a waste of money, right? And the real problem that we have is, and to go back to what I was saying at the beginning, say, how do you measure which one works and which one doesn't? How do you know that, we have all these instincts around, hey, we should do verticalization, or maybe like I should have, the logo that is integrating with a very like Slack being very specifically integrated with this tech stack that will resonate with, a specific vertical, which like is reasonable, but really we don't know if that works better than just a generic demo. Right? And so there's so much at stake. Like, I think that we need to really start thinking about treating those demos assets that are ultimately sales tool, as we have our other sales tools, such as marketing assets or outlines. So it's kind of interesting to think about.
It totally is, and we see that a lot, especially in mid-market and SMB. These, my team, each of them works at like 20, 30 deals at a time. They can't build a custom demo for every single person. So there's a lot of, okay, you have your stock demo and like this will work, or, a lot of what we do is showing integrations, right? Slack isn't anything without the power of integrations. And so, hey, they might have, they might not have Workday, but Workday will show them what they need to know. And so it's really about making that investment. But, you do have those key deals that you need to go all out for. It's just knowing which one of those you need to.
Totally. Well, Liz, there's been a lot of discussion around the demo engineering role right now. And of course, Slack being one of those organizations that are really, sort of driving it into the future. What's the role of the demo engineer right now? How are folks interacting with that stakeholder or those folks on that team? And one of the things that I have heard is the demo engineer is sort of like a really good entryway into the sales engineering practice or career, in that they can really focus on creating the product, getting really good with that piece of it, and then start to become more customer facing over time.
Yeah, demo engineering, one of the things I will say is it's different at every company. I've been at companies where it's not necessarily specific demo engineering, but they have more of a service-based model where you have somebody coming in, they maybe, need to learn a little bit more about sales engineering first, so they help build these demos. Demo engineering at Slack is really a product role that sits under the solutions engineering organization. And they build basically Slack, but for internal customers, which are primarily SEs, but also for other people in the organization to use. And I absolutely love our demo engineering team. It's a team that when I first started at Slack was just getting started, and I've really seen them grow and ramp up and see just the ability to scale that it's given the SEs. I think the SEs absolutely love demo. Well, I know they love the demo engineers. It makes our lives so much easier because, so what they do is they focus on building tools. And as I mentioned before, integrations are so important to the demos at Slack. It really helps the art of the possible. And so when they go in, you can't demo, for instance, ServiceNow out of the box. There's nothing there. Even if you were able to integrate it, there's nothing there. So how do you show that interactivity? How do you show that power? So they're able to build these mock apps for us to show that power. So now we don't have to go in and create this custom JSON code every single time. It's just there for us to interact with. That's
Awesome.
huge.
So it's a lot of like those integrations and showing what it looks like in real time, primarily with, all those sort of plugins. Awesome.
It's that. And then also they help us scale our efforts. So they have a tool called Story Builder, which allows us to go in and say, this is the message that we want to say from this particular person. This is the reactions that I want from that. This is, the response that I want as well. So you can build that story. And then the idea is that we can then use that and reuse that with other people. So you talk about scaling, really as the SE organization scales, as the demo engineering organization scales, that really helps scale our effort, be able to do more custom things, more interactions with less amount of time.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Scott, let's move on to kind of hear more about Atlassian. You've, let me just kind of start off by saying, I'm a huge fan of what Atlassian has done over the years. Like I remember hearing, now I don't know if this is true, it was sort of an urban legend, but you were able to, as an organization, build out this revenue machine, really going product led, and didn't have direct salespeople, at least for a long time, if I'm right. That's kind of what I heard. But thank you so much. Why don't we kind of kick in and chat a little bit about what the demo looks like on your site today? I know you have different business units these days.
Yeah, happy to. And yet you're right. I mean, Atlassian started, Scott and Mike, the founders out of Australia, started Jira and Confluence 20 years ago. And really the story, with no money for marketing, we knew the product had to be great. And so they built the product with this idea that the product would be the growth engine in and of itself. And we saw that, I think up until just a couple of years ago, we had no salespeople. Now, at some point, Atlassian did start to layer in what we would call enterprise advocates, or people to facilitate a purchasing process. But in terms of somebody doing outbound lead gen, that's really just never existed. And even today, within Atlassian, there's really no such thing as a prospect that comes into our funnel that's not already an Atlassian customer. And so you don't really get into this situation where you're demoing Jira. They already know how to use Jira. That's just the reality of having 200,000 customers. But there might be some optimization, or it becomes more about the cross-sell or the upsell. And so as you look at kind of how folks interact with and engage with Atlassian today, and what that journey looks like, anybody can access a free 30-day trial. So you could just sign up for the product and start using it. And so it's very experiential, if you will. You decide for yourself whether you want to move forward. There's a lot of help. There's a lot of support. There's a lot of coaching built into the experience to drive conversion and to drive upsell and cross-sell. Those trials are often augmented by videos and walkthroughs, right? Some of them will have a product marketing bend. So if you go to the website and you don't want to try it yet, you could access some content, and that might tell you about the value proposition if it's more of a marketing bend. Or if you're in the product and you're trying to learn how to do something, a lot of those might have more of a support bend from the community or the help center. And so that's kind of the history and the legacy of Atlassian. More recently, via the natural evolution of Atlassian, and how do you take somebody where a developer swiped a credit card and spent $10 on a team using Confluence, to a company spending $500,000 trying to go wall to wall across 100,000 users. It's a different motion, and there is a different expectation of how organizations want to interact with their vendors. And so we now have a modest enterprise sales team, certainly compared to our peers. Our SE team is about 30 people to support $2 billion in revenue. We're driving a ton of investment, so I'll put a plug in there. Anybody out there looking, a company like Atlassian would love to have you reach out to me. We're always recruiting and looking to expand the team, as we're kind of in a motion right now where we're really driving investment in the enterprise. And so what the team does, and really depends on the motion. If you look at the traditional Jira Confluence customers, the team is less about the demo and more about the value prop and kind of being use case based and driving folks into the cloud. If you're looking at some of the newer motions, like the acquisition of Jira Align, which is where I come from, that's much more of an enterprise top-down, right, kind of enterprise-wide decision, where the value decision is being made by a C-level executive as it applies to hundreds or thousands of users across the organization. And so unlike the traditional Atlassian motion, where it's very, let me just go in and start using it, this is much more, let me do a customized demo, let me share with you kind of what the value proposition is, et cetera.
Are you ever getting leads that are coming in, signing up for the basic Jira with the intention of upgrading to this enterprise version? And so, like, how are you sort of tracking that and then moving them into a more traditional hands-on motion?
Yes, so that is the coolest thing about being in sales engineering or solutions engineering at Atlassian right now. So we've got this flywheel. And it is Atlassian is the definition of the flywheel company, where the product, just this motion of the marketing engine, the referral, the word of mouth, the product-led growth, the usage model, the natural organic evolution and growth that happens as teams start to use it, and as Jira and all of our tools spread from one team to another to another. And so eventually the developer who swiped a credit card, right, to spend $10 to buy a team's worth of Jira, has turned into a $500,000 customer. And how do you farm those customers looking for and really climb the stack, right, in terms of who you're selling to turn that flywheel-led growth into a traditional enterprise selling motion that's still the most efficient organization on the that exists as far as I think. And that is the secret sauce, right? I won't say there is a playbook for how do you do that. That's what we as SEs at Atlassian are figuring out, and that's what's pretty cool about the role. It's how do we look for the usage patterns within existing customers to identify what they're doing and what else they might want to do, and then how do you, in partner with the enterprise advocate or the salesperson, kind of ladder the organization. Because your buyer was a developer. They swiped a credit card. That's not your buyer for your $2 million deal. That's a very different person who exists 8 levels up in the organization. And even the Jira admin, right, or the person who might be responsible for the relationship today, isn't the person who's going to sign that contract. And so it is a very different motion, and it is very, I think, it's interesting, it's compelling, it's exciting, it's innovative. Yeah.
I'm curious to get your thought, because hearing you talk is fascinating. And one of the things that I found myself into it, and I'm curious to get your take on this, is if you start to try to get a global impact at a much higher level that you are today, I'm assuming it's probably multiple teams is, and specifically when it comes to the demo, I wonder how you demonstrate to a C-level or like an SVP level the value of Atlassian in a compelling demo, as opposed to just pure sales and rationalization and ROI and all that kind of stuff. Like, can you elaborate a little bit on like what type of motions you see from the SE organization when trying to get there?
Well, so to be totally frank, like, we are inventing that like as we're going through this webinar right now, and that is a hot topic of conversation, because historically, as a product-led growth organization, I mean, it's product, right? It's this product and this product and this product and this product. And so as those products come together in solutions, right, in the agile space or IT service management or work management space or DevOps, and as we look to go wall to wall, those solutions need to come together to solve an overarching problem, right? To create a compelling reason for an organization that has adopted us in DevOps and Agile to now look at Atlassian for ITSM in order to augment, right? And for example, create better connectivity between IT and engineering, right? It becomes our job to create that compelling narrative that stitches those solutions together, right? And helps to kind of level up. And I think one thing that that one way I like to think about it is kind of this kind of I might call it right shifting the demo, if you will, right? The more you can kind of put early in the sales cycle, and I mean, you guys do this, and I mean, right? The more you can automate, create repeatability, scalability in the early stages, whether it's during the discovery phase or right in the market, as you look at the marketing organization. If it's a repeatable demo, why isn't SE doing it, right? You can just press play. So we want to reserve the valuable, right, SE resources that we have for the highly customized, right, really needs-based situations that happen deep into the sales cycle. So left shift all the automation, right, and all the repeatability and scalability, and create a funnel of pre-qualified folks that know what they want, that are well educated, and right shift the really expensive SE stuff, right, to the advanced, align, engage, right, stages of the cycle. And really have them almost exclusively focused on leveling up the conversation and the stitching together, the combination of that, the demonstration, the features, the advantage, the benefits, but also the value and the solution that layers on top.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's about like showing them how Atlassian would fit in their ecosystem, right? It's about like understanding for how they would integrate with their current, DevOps and IT best practices, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Right. That makes sense. Makes a lot of sense.
Great. Thank you for that. Scott, if you were to think about, how the demo is evolving, or how do you see it's going to sort of evolve into the future? Anything that kind of comes to mind? Do you folks, by the way, have a demo engineering organization?
Yes, in fact, we just sort of rebranded kind of some of our practices group to, we call them SE Tech, but it is a demo engineering group that is responsible for, as Liz just explained. It sounds like we have a lot to talk about. That is a group that is responsible for the demo stack, right, if you will. And we're not the only customer, but we're the primary customer. It also is leveraged by the marketing organization to create those videos, and the university organization to create some content. But the needs of the SE team are different than the needs of our customers. The nature of the scalability, the nature of the needing to create the integrations to integrate to, et cetera. So this is something that's new for us as well. It's something that we're investing in. It's something that, as I've kind of come to learn about it over the course of the last 6 months and think about it, kind of sort of all in with this kind of need. So it's good. And then as far as the evolution, I see the I see the role of the SE continuing to up level, right? And I see almost like and I see a little bit of a convergence, right, between the high end of what the SE is doing from a value selling perspective and part of what the rep is doing themselves, right? And I also see a convergence, and I think the folks at Presales Collective talk about this a lot, between what the SEs are doing and what our success managers are doing, right? As particularly in a SaaS model where like I said, we're not really out there prospecting, at least at Atlassian, for brand new customers. We're farming the customers that we have and upselling and cross-selling and driving additional value up the stack. Well, there are people there that are managing that relationship. They're called customer success managers, right? And so that job, if done really well, makes our job super easy, right? Because that's where almost the lead gen and the insights that are coming from for where we might need to go and focus. And now the SE can come in with that more of that sales outlook. But really, why shouldn't the success manager have more of a sales tech outlook, right? And why shouldn't the EA become, be very technically proficient in what they're doing? And then really the role of the sales engineer, the solutions engineer is, we are at the tip of that spear, if you will, right? We're very much at the curve of where value is meeting technology, is meeting the customer. And we're really reserved for those use cases and those customers that are of the most value to the organization.
Got it. And how do you think this is impacting? So this new pre-roll or pre-sales role, rather, one of the things that really comes to mind is, well, of course, I've always been on the sales side until now, on the marketing side, but the whole sales development organization, right, where you had this specialization, and it really sort of changed the way that I think at least the sales team was designed or organized. How do you think that the pre-sales roles, which seem to now be getting more specialized with the demo engineer, irrespective of what you want to call, with the solutions engineer, with sales engineering and the specializations that are happening, how do you think that's going to continue to impact the way that the organization is designed?
If I think if I understood the question, we're talking about the SDR, the sales development reps that are kind of at the front end of the cycle.
Well, yeah, exactly. Well, what I was doing was kind of using it as an analogy. I remember how the sales development reps impacted the design of the sales team. So using that same sort of idea, how do you think that pre-sales and the specialization that's happening right now will impact the overall revenue team and how it's designed, like the different roles within that organization, who they interface with, where it sits? Because sometimes I hear that demo engineers will sit on product marketing side. Sometimes there's been some organizations where I've seen that.
Yeah. Lots to go there. I don't know how to answer the demo engineering question yet. I think that's kind of relatively new. That sits within the SE organization right now, but the nature and makeup of that organization, kind of feels more like a product organization. Now, I love I come from a 20-year product management background, so I love with that organization kind of being able to work deeply, kind of entrenched within the SE organization, serving our needs. Organizationally, it best meets the needs of the SE organization because they are not distracted. Their sole kind of purpose in life is to make sure that we're driving revenue across the organization, and sometimes that can get a little distracted as part of the other organizations. In terms of how the role of the SE organization is impacting the revenue teams at large, I think, and I wouldn't have guessed this 2 years ago, right? I would have guessed that as organizations become more product-led from a growth perspective, and as the martini drinking, right, take you out to lunch, meet the CIO kind of sales rep is on the decline, and the kind of inside sales, highly technical, very knowledgeable, more transactional rep is on the rise. That because SEs would be more traditionally paired with that, kind of like the high-end enterprise rep, and the inside reps were more self-service in terms of being able to do some introductory demos. That I would have guessed that there might have been like a relative decline in the need for solutions engineering, but that was a very narrow thinking. And so as I've come to realize over the course of the past couple of years, and I can't totally discarded that thought, is that we are in the age of the SE, right? And that is because the skill sets that combine a deep understanding of technology and understanding how to connect that to value and understanding how to move the sales motion forward. That's what companies are looking for, and customers want to talk to the most knowledgeable person in the building, and that might be the EA or the sales rep. And so if we're up leveling the reps with more of a technology bend, that's great. But oftentimes it is a slightly different skill set. And so as all these things come together, as customers, with the kind of, I guess, with the reduction of that truly enterprise, right, take you out to lunch type of person, comes the desire for the customer to connect deeply and more directly with the folks in the building that best understand the technology, and that often is the SE. And so I think you're going to see more and more of that and in the future.
Yeah, totally. Scott, thank you for that. So helpful. Folks, just a quick reminder, if you do have any questions, go ahead and click on the Q&A function or comment on the wall. We'll be getting there shortly. Susan, how are you? Thank you so much, Susan. I know you have a different motion there at Blue Yonder. Talk me through the videos on your site and sort of like, what's been sort of the approach to kind of starting to give some of the product or some of the views of the product on the site, and then how that parlays into what you're doing.
Sure. So let me do a quick level set for those of you that might not be as familiar with Blue Yonder. So we're switching to a giant enterprise sale. I have C-level customers. They're not coming to my website looking for a free trial themselves. They've got their business owners coming. And when you come to our website, yes, there are free trials. Yes, you can request a demo. Yes, you can request a conversation. But what we're really looking to do is take them on a journey of what's the right fit of solutions for them. And for those of you on the call that have a single product or 5 products or 10 products, I'm envious of you, because I have the fortune to represent over 120 products that we go to market with in manufacturing and retail. We are looking to compete on breadth of scale and our ability to come in and solve a use case of problems. So while customers may be coming to the website to get educated on specific capabilities, the pre-sales job is to identify what's that end-to-end story, what's that problem, how do we solve it along that continuum of solutions, and really redirect the conversation that way. So you might come in looking for education in one level, but we're looking to connect with you to understand what you really need and direct you in a way that you might not have even thought was possible for your enterprise.
And awesome. You know, what do those typical first calls look like for your organization, and how do you start to kind of maintain that control, especially with, you know, potential prospects or customers that maybe want to see some of the product? But I know that for a robust offering, it's not as easy as just showing them, you know, some features.
Right. And I'll say a lot of the first calls will feel very familiar to you guys. We get BD on the call and, hey, we want a demo, or we get a rep that comes in and says, hey, we got an RFP, let's show them some software. And we have to kind of backpedal and redirect on, okay, what are they looking for? What's really happening? What are we trying to do? So for us, it's yes, you want a demo, and yes, we want to get it to you. So the demo is wildly alive and well at the enterprise level, but we've had to introduce some earlier sales motions into the cycle because other customers that do have product-led cycles have created an immediate need to see, let me see it. So we almost have to get past the hurdle of, let me see it, let me experience it, and then I'll talk to you about what's happening. So we've started creating a lot more introductory conversations. Scott, you talked about the click left, right? How can we automate some of those early conversations? So we're working on that. How do we get more content on the website so the buyers feel comfortable going on this journey with us? It's almost like we used to have to beg for discovery time, and now we have to really take advantage of that to understand, what do you need? How do I connect you to what you want? We might not get discovery time. So it might be a combination disco demo, or it might be they need to see some products and then they'll come in. But with a buyer that's so much more educated, or to Liz's point earlier, thinks they're more educated, how do we get them onto the path that we need to take them on to really showcase Blue Yonder's capabilities?
Yeah, I think there's certainly certain products where, you know, you'll have a prospect that's able to come in, kick the tires, and is, you know, can be fairly educated. But I was just chatting with even like a product like Outreach. I was chatting with their VP of sales, Mark, and, you know, he's very clear on how, you know, he just will push back. He will not, you know, allow his reps to just go into something blindly. In terms of like alignment with the AE and being able to capture the discovery that they're collecting, and then the second piece of that is, how do you now sort of mesh that with the type of research before the call, pre-call discovery that your SE is able to do, to then go in with a little more context, do disco, you know, and maybe show some stuff, but really be able to make it as tailored as possible.
Yeah, you hit on a lot of topics there. Selling is wild team sport, and sometimes it feels like the Wild West. So what we've chartered our pre-sales team with at Blue Yonder is riding shotgun on deals. So we've said, listen, if your AE is the quarterback and they're leading the charge, I need you in the front seat with them, helping them navigate, connecting through the organization, dividing and conquering. Who are the stakeholders? What do they need to understand? What are the resources within the company that you can bring to bear in that account? So we're fortunate to have a great transformation advisory group, which we can go in with points of view on how our companies that we're talking to are benchmarked against the industry. How can we help them? What's the value dynamic that we can drive? We also know it's not just about the sales stages in Salesforce, it's the conversations we have to get that customer along that education point to where they're comfortable making a selection. So how do we go in and cover both the education of the customer that's needed to get to that point, as well as helping them to understand what's unique and different about how we come to the table, especially with AI ML offerings. It's a lot of just nebulous, what is it? Oh, you have one of those too, they must be the same. Well, they're not, and here's why they're different. And you have to have them engaging in those conversations for them to understand really what you can do.
I get a question, like you mentioned education specifically of your customers, and I'm also coming from a background where my product could do a lot of things, and it's very hard to understand the art of the possible. So I'm really wondering, in the spirit of automation and left click, how do you go about figuring what is the most impactful for this customer education? Is this like, are you looking at specific use cases? Are you looking at specific vertical? What's your thought process around this?
So we've divided our major industries into 7 or 8 use cases at the business process level. And then we've built out transformation advisory offerings around benchmarking where you stand against those, what kind of value can our solutions drive. So we're coming in with a strong point of view of where your organization fits on the spectrum and what we think would be most impactful for you to drive that. So you might come in.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, you might come in thinking you need one type of solution, but when we look at what's going to drive the most value for the organization, there might be 2 other pieces you can get really quick value from right away that weren't even on your radar when you look at that end-to-end use case.
And are you able to demonstrate these use cases using like demo of your product, or is this more of a conversational piece?
We are working more and more towards having them all live demonstrations and free trials. Right now, we're probably more on demos. We don't have trials of those yet. It's a market motion we're moving towards.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so it's like you can also kind of introduce the demo mid funnel, so it doesn't have to be totally product led from the top to bottom. Susan, if you think about the sort of how the dynamics of pre-sales is changing in the field, anything that comes to mind?
Ooh, that's a loaded question. The job is so different than when I started in it 20 something years ago. And that's why I love it, right? It's not the same job on a day-to-day basis or year to year. So I've seen it evolve from, I once bought a car with a trunk big enough to fit my demo servers in, right? Where you had to have a plastic case and carry this equipment around. Now it's all on the cloud. The SaaS train's coming out. Everything is so dynamic. The roadmap becomes so much more important. Just staying on top of all of the different aspects you need. To me, this job is fascinating because you have to understand and be a SME on the industries you serve, their business problems, the products, which no longer just come out once every 18 months, but you have to constantly stay on the bleeding edge. Competitors can understand what you do much more easily. It's such an exciting place to be. And I see the role continuing to move towards further and further to that right side of how do we continue to add more value and make this sales cycle even more engaging and faster along that paradigm.
Awesome. Well, for our final slide here for you, Susan, thank you so much. You sort of spoke to this earlier, but I thought it was so important because there's so many organizations out there who are competing with these niche players that are offering full-blown trials and POCs right off the bat. How are you, just to kind of maybe touch on it again, how is Blue Yonder competing with those folks?
And we absolutely are. Typically what we see is they're coming in to do a specific thing. And again, our strength is that breadth of portfolio. So when we compete, it's how do we change that conversation to be an end-to-end more comprehensive value add story. But it really comes down to how do we, that relationship with the stakeholder, how do we help them understand what they need to be successful in their organization? How do we keep our pre-sales team disciplined around product readiness and ready to go and pivot in so many different directions with these interrelated products? It's not easy. You have to understand the business, you have to understand the portfolio, and you really need to understand where that customer is looking to go. This is one we're going to continue to evolve on and iterate.
Awesome. I think someone had a question or a comment.
No, I found this fascinating because being able to position Blue Yonder as a thought leader, considering the breadth of your technology, is something that is always, can be a double-edged sword. Because on the one hand, you obviously know the industry and the different verticals so much better than some of these point solutions, right? But on the other hand, having a product that is extremely powerful can be a little bit overwhelming for your audience. So being able to distill down the essence of what's important, especially
Right.
when you have SEs like I used to be that are like super technical and want to go deep into exactly what all of the different things that can happen. This is a very, very difficult things to do. So definitely something that everybody's going to work on for a while.
Fantastic.
Agreed.
Thank you so much. We'll go ahead and move on to the next slide, Susan. That was awesome. First of all, thank you. If you do have any questions, comments, critiques,
We do have a couple of questions in the Q&A. George, do we want to address them now?
absolutely. Well, we're going to move on to the questions here in a second. But if folks do want to submit any feedback, it's my email there. If you want to learn more about the Presales Collective, I can hook you up with Eugene and James. Of course, for Pres, obviously, love to help out in any way that we can. Awesome. So let's go ahead and dive into some of the questions. I know we do have some folks who have commented. So the first question from Josh Hodge, I hope I am mentioning that correctly. A great commentary so far, Scott. Thank you so much. Is this a full endorsement of the core account team made of account executives, sales engineers, customer success, and inside sales? Let me see if maybe Josh, if
So
you could go ahead.
if I can clarify, if I understand it. So, Scott, you were talking about the fact that you had to have synergy between customer success, inside sales, AEs, and SEs. And I guess the question is, Josh, you can correct us if we're wrong, but is this your ideal account team roster, if you will?
Yeah, I think so. So you've got the salesperson who's ultimately accountable for the revenue and has to make the calls. You've got the technology, it's got somebody that can support that from a demo, a technology standpoint. You've got somebody that owns the relationship, right, with the account on an ongoing basis to support the day-to-day kind of levers of customer success. And I mean, that triad and, at different levels feels like kind of the right level and kind of right type of support to me. So I don't know what full-throated means, but I think there's probably a kind of a right team and right approach for different circumstances, but sounds pretty good.
So the follow-up is, I think that's what he's going for. It's a problem of ratio. He's saying 5-to-1 for AE to SE ratio, and CSM inside sell often oversubscribed. This is a can of worms. Do we want to open it?
Yeah. Well, why don't we do this, folks? I know we're running up on time here. Let's take the questions. Alex, if you can copy the questions, and we'll take it to Slack on PSC, and we'll dive in, have a good conversation around that. Let's move to the next slide here. Just want to go ahead and give a couple items a shout out here. Of course, first of all, we're going to go ahead and launch a poll here. So as we move on to the next slide, maybe you can dive into the poll and let us know how we can get better. Very, very thankful to Troops, Scott and Dan, and those folks are over there doing a fantastic job. They helped make this webinar possible today. So thank you so much. Check them out. They're sort of like this plumbing of revenue teams that connects all your tools and makes it really easy to post engagement and activity in Slack and Microsoft. What is it? Microsoft Teams. That's what it is. Go to the next slide. And here's some events. So do take a screenshot, maybe pop out your phone and take a picture of the upcoming Presales Collective events. Again, really great folks. If you don't know James and Yuji, you're missing out. Great folks. And we'll go ahead and also give the Presales Collective Slack a huge shout out. I don't think anyone here is unaware of how awesome this community is. So looking forward to continuing to partner with PSC. And then lastly, Oh, I guess that's it. Well, folks, thank you so much for taking the time. Again, we're going to take those questions and post them in the Slack conversation in PSC, and we'll go to town. There's so much to cover there. So hope to see you in our next webinar. And then thanks to everyone, Scott, Liz, Susan, for taking the time, busy executives at great companies. And we know how hard it is to come out for an hour. So very, very appreciative. Thank you so much for bestowing your wisdom. And we hope to continue to evangelize and promote the sales engineering and pre-sales career. Take care, everyone.
Bye, folks.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.